overwhelmed by an encouraging response and participation for all our webinars so far. Respecting the interest expressed by many attendees, here we are with our sequel of our first webinar, Weaving Through Turbulent COVID Times, the HR Way. Today, we would be touching upon various other HR aspects like challenges, adaptations, and their implications. Before we go ahead, I wish to introduce the host institution, Dhruva College of Management, which started its humble beginning 25 years ago under the dynamic guidance of Professor Dr. S. Pratap Reddy, with the core principles of diligence, dignity, dhyana, and dharma, which are known as the 4Ds of the Dhruva philosophy. Dhruva College of Management proudly stands as India's first not-for-profit management institution founded by a management professor. Dr. Reddy introduced a paradigm shift in teaching learning process of management discipline because he always wanted to give this MBA program accessible and affordable to even students at the bottom of the pyramid. Dr. Reddy is also one of those visionary leaders who is amongst the top 10 thinkers in India. We are happy to share that Dhruva has initiated a drive to help the needy in these challenging COVID times. Therefore, we have a humble request to all the attendees. While it is purely voluntary, it is encouraged to make donations of rupees 100 and above towards COVID-19 warriors. The details of the same is available on the screen, or you can even contact the host institution, Dhruva College of Management, for the same. May I also request all participants to kindly follow the house rules, if I may put it that way. I request you all to keep the audio and the video features disabled while you're attending the session. This will help us have a smooth session, ongoing session. Request all the attendees to also post in their queries, questions, whatever they have, comments in the chat window as the session proceeds. I request you all to share your email IDs in the chat window so that once the session is over, we can send you a synopsis of our discussions today. Also, I request you to kindly bear in case of any technological issue, and I also request you to re-log in case there is any difficulty you face. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our panel speakers for the session, who were extremely modest in accepting to join us once again to share their valuable insights. Ms. Lekha Shishta, she is a renowned global talent strategist with more than 4 decades of diversified experience. She is a recognized trainer, leadership mentor, and a global strategic consultant. She is an alumnus of India's best academic institutions like Delhi University and IIM Bangalore. She is a coveted HR leader with numerous awards like Indira Gandhi Priyadarshini Award, HMA's HR Manager of the Year, the Asia Pac HR Woman Super Achiever of the Year, Top 100 Global HR Tech Minds, to name a few. Ma'am, it is always an honor and delight to have you with us. Dhruva College of Management is privileged and proud to be long associated with a visionary woman leader like you. We welcome you once again, ma'am.
Thank you,
Our second most welcome. Our second panelist is Mr. Jaydev Goteti. He is a seasoned HR professional with 2 decades of rich HR experience across the entire gamut of HR, including HR strategy, talent acquisition, talent development, organization design, employee engagement, learning, compensation and benefits, change management, HR operations, and leadership development. During his 21 years of career, he was associated with reputed Indian and MNC organizations, including Cheminor Drugs, General Electric, Genpact, Bank of America, and CA Technologies. In his last stint, he was heading the HR for Adrant India Networks. His presence actually makes us even more proud as he is the alumnus of Dhruva College of Management and a PGDM gold medalist. A very, very warm welcome to you, Mr. Jayadev. Before we go ahead, since it is our sequel of the previous webinar on weaving through turbulent COVID times, for the benefit of the people who could not join us in the previous webinar, please refer to the screen to get a glimpse of the previous session that we took, as we would be taking our discussions further from that point. I request all the attendees once again to kindly keep their video and audio options disabled. Lekha ma'am and Jayadev sir, since our last session, we actually requested our attendees to share any queries, any questions which they directly wanted to address, ask you as panelists. So we have received a couple of questions from them on emails, and we have tried that we'll just have all those questions being asked to you, and we'll just go through these questions as we start our discussions.
That's fine, Priya. Thank you.
Without further ado, let's get our discussion rolling. Ma'am, off late we have had these words like reinventing, rewriting, reforming, restructuring. These are all becoming really popular these days. And in the same lines, my question to you is that many organizations are relooking at revising their pay structures. When I say revising the pay structures, in the sense, probably they are.
I said at the start of the previous webinar as well, this particular topic, weaving through turbulent COVID times, the HR way, is so critical. Never has there been a bigger imperative for HR before. In fact, these times have brought the role of HR to the surface. First of all, in my opinion, to calm the waters. People are tense, there's a lot of stress around, there's so much of uncertainty. Also to churn for possibly the treasure of productivity and revenue of the business. And then finally, to sail the business and the employees safely to shore. Coming to your particular question, I know some organizations have just started the thought process, okay? They haven't got anywhere there yet. It's very nascent right now. They are thinking of restructuring the compensation, yes. And it does stand to reason. If you look at it, if the choice is to work from home, then many of the current allowances, whether it's a lunch allowance or a transport allowance or even a shift allowance, etc., may not really be relevant, right? I mean, I remember the time, and I'm sure, Jaydev, it was a little before the time that you probably started working. But, probably, maybe I would say the late 90s and the early 2000s, it was actually a very premium benefit for CXOs to carry a cell phone. And then finally, it came down to every manager getting a cell phone from the company. But that made it possible for every employee or every manager to actually be available 24/7, which actually cut into their private times as well. I believe that with the working from home, it's going to be very much the same, right? I think people are not going to find the current allowances to be of much use. I also believe that some people may really want more cash in hand, right? I mean, that's going to be the name of the game. In fact, I also believe that, and this is my personal opinion, but I believe there may also be a change in the type of employees, where earlier we were looking at people on the rolls and we had some contract employees. I believe that this change today might actually give rise to more of gig workers. People are going to be there only for a short period of time, just be able to do some pieces of work. You might even find a person taking on gigs for 2 or 3 companies simultaneously, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as they are continuing to deliver. Which means that, the earlier concept that we had of dual employment, the jeopardy of dual employment, etc., may not really hold any value tomorrow. With all this in focus, yes, I do believe there could be a restructuring of the compensation and the way in which performance and productivity is going to be managed. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that anyone is there yet, but yes, it is on the cards. I would do that if I was managing these organizations too. Jaydev, over to you. What would you like to say?
Thank you, ma'am. I think you've mentioned it and summarized it very well in terms of why organizations are resorting or thinking in those lines. As you mentioned, we are at a stage wherein organizations are still contemplating what is the right option, what is the right lever that we need to tweak. But fundamentally, as you mentioned, we should understand from the point of view as to why is it the organization thinking of pay restructuring. It is coming from the fact that organizations are going through an extremely difficult time, and some of the benefits or compensation components that they were giving in the past is going to be a luxury today. So what they're trying to do is, can I cut down the frills and keep the structure, pay systems and pay components very simple, and thereby save the cost. So we should look at any effort that the organization is doing to save the cost so that it can run the business more efficiently. I think we should appreciate that fact. And I don't think we should worry about it as long as the jobs are protected, because that's the fundamental reason why organizations are looking at these options. Thank you.
Very true. And I'd just like to end with this particular question with the point that Professor Priya, you had stated that, could it be that this is going to impact the productivity of people negatively? I really do not think so. I believe if people believe there is equity in the way in which they are being compensated for the job that they're doing, and they feel that, they're getting their right, their worth, I don't think that people are going to feel that it is a demotivation. In fact, I feel that it will be even more motivating not to have to submit bills for allowances and, to get cash in hand. I think it's even better. And like Jaydev had stated, while we have to definitely be careful about the kind of cost to the business, we also need to make sure that the employees' rights are always protected.
Absolutely, ma'am, and Jaydev sir, as you said that even if we cut down on these operational costs, at least the operational, or these conveyance and other allowances that they are giving, at least the operational cost is being considered and the jobs are not being slashed down. So that's a good way of at least continuing these difficult situations, continuing during these difficult situations. Just an extension to that question, Jaydev Garu, we've also heard, as you both just said, that organizations are just thinking about it. Nobody has come to this final consensus that they are actually going to restructure, but they're just thinking about it. On the same lines, we also heard that organizations might restructure their salary compensation in the sense the composition of the variable and the fixed part. So probably they are looking to raise the variable part and bring down the fixed part. So what is the objective behind this particular thought? What is that the organizations are thinking? Jaydev Garu.
Yeah, so first thing, we should understand that all the organizations right now, as we speak, there be far more relaxations are given in the lockdown now. Organizations are rebooting themselves, and they are at a stage wherein they are almost starting from ground zero. They have to build their customers, they have to build their cash reserves, they have to build their sales, revenues, everything. So in this current situation, what is important for them is to ensure that their revenues, their goals and strategies are directed towards achieving the business results so that they can make money. So today, therefore, organizations are looking at having a higher variable portion so that the organization altogether can actually achieve those desired results, which are linked to the individual goals, to the team goals. Now, obviously, when people go through this transition, when people go through this change, some of them are disappointed because what I got till yesterday, now I have to put in a little more effort, and there'll be so many others who have to influence on my pay outcome. But that's a reality today, because almost all the organizations are rebooting. So I've seen in some of the manufacturing companies that the variable component, one of the variable component is your sales, net sales or new sales. Now, a finance person cannot go and say, look, I don't do anything with sales, therefore you can't give me this variable component. Because today organizations are rebooting, they want to achieve certain sales and revenue for the overall benefit of the organization. So in this effort, the variable component is likely to go, and it is good in a way, because then what will happen is all the employees will strive harder to achieve those results. And if the organization can move in that direction quickly, sooner things will settle down. And who knows, tomorrow the old composition or pay mix can come back.
I'd like to add to what you just said, and I think it's not something new, right? I mean, we have been seeing this in the past as well. In a lot of the IT companies, there's already been a growing dependence on variable pay. And two of those components, of course, are one is, of course, the individual performance, but also the way in which the company is doing overall. And therefore, everyone seeks to be able to deliver on the company goals and the company mission. The other thing I believe is that, while people cannot depend on a fixed component of salary, okay, last month I got, this amount, and therefore this month also I can get the same amount, and therefore plan their entire salary, their entire expenses along that. Also, it gives people the onus of, saying that, yeah, last month I got that much, but this month I can get more. So it's not that they are afraid of getting less, they could actually get more as well. So I believe that this is a very good sign. And it's not something new. As goals continue to change, as goals continue to evolve, function to function, it's also going to be the customer and the overall mission of the company that is going to drive this variable component. And therefore, anybody who's serving the customer is obviously going to be the front line. And everybody else in the organization needs to serve the people who are serving the customer. You can only have two levels in the company, right? So everyone needs to be in that same drive towards the customer, which is why we call it a customerized organization, right? The customer is really at the focus of whatever the company is. So a finance person saying, I have no relation to net sales and therefore I could not, I can't have my variable pay connected to that, I think, in my opinion, has no reason to be. The other thing I wanted to state is that as I just said to the earlier question, if we are going to have more gig workers, more variable workers, more contract workers, more flexi time, the concept of attendance and absence from work is no longer relevant. So I cannot say that they're going to be paid leave, or people have put in 8 hours of work and therefore they have to get the fixed amount of salary any longer. It's going to be so different from in this post-COVID time. So in that case, it's not going to be possible for us to have a fixed salary. I believe this is even better for organizations. And I believe this is a very thrilling time for HR. Honestly, in my opinion, we are coming into our own. Things are evolving. It's a fabulous time for lots of innovation, lots of leadership. And people in HR have to be ready to adapt and to continuously evolve. It's a fabulous time ahead. So, I think it's great in case variable components are going to grow. It has to be that way.
Great, ma'am. So out and out, it's a good news that all organizations are emphasizing on increasing the variable component. They have better opportunities to earn more, so the lifestyles might improve and so on. There may be a lot of other changes that they can come up with, as probably leadership roles also might increase in times to come. Very well said, ma'am. Ma'am, we've also heard about some big decisions which were being taken by many state governments. If I have to put it like, it's quite a sensitive issue, so I may just put it like this, that probably there has been certain regulations, change in regulations, certain suspension of policies, alterations of few labor laws, and there are a lot of talks about the change in the hire and fire policy. So a lot of people are giving us mixed reactions to it, some positive, some negative. How do you view this, ma'am? And do you think, as of now, only few states have taken up this thing? Do you think many other states are likely to take this up?
Professor Priya, this is a very, very controversial issue at this particular time, as you would have been seeing in the papers. The labor law reversal that was there in certain states is actually now being countered in court as well. May not come through, may come through. I have no idea about it. I do believe, yes, like you stated, there are both advantages and disadvantages to the particular issue. It does give strength to certain stakeholders, probably puts other stakeholders in the game on the back foot. I have my own personal opinion about the fairness of this, the equity of this for people who are working hard. Will it be a short changing and so on? But I really do not believe that. I wouldn't like to speak about it at this time because it really is too controversial. So I don't think this is the right audience for it. Jaidev?
Yeah, even I agree, because we still are not very clear on which direction these changes would go. It's still under discussion stages. Lots of labor laws are under the control of the states. So yes, they're all looking at it, but nothing has come out. So therefore, even I would not like to speculate. Let's wait for the government to give more clarity on it.
Done. Agreed with both of your points. We'll not drag this question further, and let's go ahead to the next question. Jaidev Garu, this particular season of the year, usually everybody is looking forward for bonuses, increments, this particular quarter as we are just heading to. And at the same time, we have a lot of employees being overburdened by their EMI dues, at the same time, the school fee dues. In the view of these particular changes that the industry is currently facing, my question to you is, what are the short-term and long-term effects of pay cuts and no increments, especially during this particular quarter? That's my question. Jaidev Garu, over to you.
Yeah, so we should understand any pay cut is not a permanent solution. It's a short-term measure. And we also need to understand why is it that the organizations are looking into this direction. Any pay cut is in the current context is for the organization to survive because of the situation that the organizations are in. But it's not something that the organizations can afford to continue in the long run, because ultimately no organization would like to have demoralized employees or employees with a low morale, and it's not sustainable. It affects their brand, it affects their reputation. So it's not a long-term measure, it's a short-term measure. Have organizations put the merit increases on hold? Yes, many organizations have put the merit increase on hold. Some organizations, even including public sector enterprises, have put the promotions and the associated merit increases on hold because of the current situation. We must also understand the purpose of this. That's what I keep repeating. Economists or economic pundits are saying that it will take probably a year or possibly a little more than a year for the organizations and economies to bounce back and come to the normal situation. So in this current situation, organizations are looking at every possible option to curtail the cost so that they can stay afloat and tide over the current situation. Any cost measure that can help the organization stay afloat and can save the jobs, which includes even stopping the merit increases, we should look at it in a positive way, because organizations are trying to protect the employees and they want to tide over the situation. In the short term, people will go through a difficult time, but it's all about planning ourselves. So if we face a similar situation in our house, I'm sure we also will figure out ways to cut down the costs and manage things. So I think people have to get used to it in the short run. And once I'm pretty optimistic that things will bounce back. And once things reach the normalcy, we can see a lot of things coming back in terms of merit increase and others. Ma'am, any thoughts from your side?
Yes, I'd like to add to what you said, and I think it's true that it can be something which is only a short-term measure. But we have a participative management these days in most companies, and people are very open and transparent about the problems that are facing their companies. And I believe that the more the CXOs speak about this, that is the CEO and the senior management talk about this in their teams, tell them what the problems really are, about businesses not being, the business isn't coming, revenue is in a flux right now, and so on. If the choice before the employee is a layoff or a pay cut, I think most people would prefer a pay cut to be able to secure their job. This is not the first time that this has happened. In the IT industry, IT sector, where I've been a member of this for the last about 15, 20 years now, I believe that this is about the second time I've seen these massive layoffs, which were on the anvil. And a lot of organizations had said either a pay cut or a layoff. And a lot of the employees preferred to have the pay cut because it did mean that they had their jobs in hand. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that the employees support the decision and there is this transparent and frequent communication with them, the trust that happens within the organization, and people are okay. Plus, I do believe that also, while you may have a deferred appraisal and deferred increment cycle right now, it is also something that people might say, and I've had this happen in two of my client organizations as well, where they've stated that we are going to give you a pay increase. The pay increase will be effective 1st of April, but we will only give it to you in October. Hopefully in October, if things are okay, or it might be even deferred to a little later point of time, which means that employees know it's coming, right? They don't know how much, but they know that there will be an increment that is coming at that particular time. And they are okay with it. It's a part of life today, I think. It's better than the kind of layoffs that they have been threatening in many of the other industries and in countries across the world, even in the more developed countries across the world.
Just to add on, I have actually come across a small logistics company wherein they're in this difficult situation. So they actually ran a poll across their 200 employees in the country, and they asked them, we have this situation. They've told the employees very, very transparently, we are in this situation. What would you prefer? You would prefer the organization to take a layoff route, or you prefer a 25% pay cut across the length and breadth of the organizations? People have overwhelmingly responded they prefer a pay cut rather than a layoff because it actually affects the lives of the employees. So to your point, yes, the organizations are looking at a transparent approach of letting employees understand the situation and choose what is the best for them as well as the organization.
So taking viewpoints from both of you, if I have to just put it into 3 points, 3 things have come out very clearly during this particular scenario. One is that it is a temporary roadblock and soon things are going to be better. The second is after this COVID and this difficult, challenging times that organizations are facing, transparency has actually improved. CXOs are actually being very vocal about the ground realities, and they are telling their employees that this is what the scenario looks like. And very, very, very nicely worded by Lekha ma'am when she said that when an employee is given a choice, either a layoff or a pay cut, then most of them will obviously agree for a pay cut. Great, ma'am. Thank you so much for your insight, ma'am. Ma'am, since we are just talking about these difficult times, one thing that most of us agree will be that all employees are currently undergoing tremendous stress. And we also understand that organizations are genuinely concerned about their employees and they want to help their employees come out of this mental stress. So as far as I know, there are many organizations that run things like employee assistance programs. It's popularly called as EAP. So in these COVID times, do we actually have these concepts being practically run? Maybe you can just help us understand.
Absolutely, Priya. I mean, Professor Priya, this is something that is so much in vogue. Earlier benefits were things like concierge services, fuel, somebody taking care of vegetables to be bought for the house. I remember at the time that I was working out of Mountain View in the US in one of my previous assignments with SumTotal, we had Google just across the road. And it used to be fabulous to see the Google employees get their cars serviced right there on the campus, and dry cleaning being brought in and put in their cars, and vegetables and provisions being picked up and so on. So we used to have these kind of concierge services that were there. This came to India also, in about the mid I would say the first decade of the 2000s, yes, we have seen this also coming in quite a big way. Wellness, health support, etc. You know, a lot of these programs have been huge. Another thing that has happened now, though, more currently, is that we have these confidential workplace services, you know, which is like, for instance, it could be a psychologist, it could be a lawyer, it could be a counselor. There is a lot of stress, of course, in organizations, whether it's financial stress, it's a job stress, it is, you know, the pressure of the role, for instance, new managers having to be very hard on their teams. And COVID has kind of brought all these, I think, problems even more to the surface. We've seen some very interesting cases as well. We've seen abuse of children, abuse of women at home. We've seen habits which have become very difficult to break during these COVID times, like, for instance, smoking, drinking, drug abuse. All these have again been things which have been coming to the surface. Now, people do find it still quite an ignominy to actually go out to directly another psychologist outside. When these services are made available inside the office, we've seen an overwhelming sign up for the time of this counselor or the psychologist in-house, right? So, for instance, in just the previous company that I was working with, we used to have this person coming in once a week, and her time was always blocked, and she more often than not had to overstay the 2 hours that she was supposed to be there because there were so many people waiting for her time. We've had another change to this. While that was only a psychologist, we've also had a lawyer who's also been coming in to give any kind of advice, you know, things like home problems, house problems, rentals, legalities, which people are not very aware of. So that's another employee assistance program that has come up. Counselor, I told you. We've also had a psychiatrist. That means a person who actually gives the medicine. So not just a psychologist, but a person who diagnoses and also delivers the medicine or prescribes the medicine which needs to be taken. But please understand that these are all short term, right? So we always tell the psychologist and the psychiatrist, your job is to try and help the person to the extent possible in the shortest period of time. But if it is something which is going to be really requiring continuous support, then you must direct the person to the right kind of a service outside. So this is something which is there. The stress is there. Depression is coming up. Popular service. It's paid for by the company, but it's utilized by the employees. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. For a minute, we lost you, but now we can hear you well.
And can you see me as well? It says reconnecting, so I'm just wondering.
No. The video is also available. We can see you.
Okay, good.
Yes, ma'am. Lekha ma'am, are you able to hear us? Looks like that we had a technical glitch. Lekha ma'am, are you able to hear? Yeah. Jaydev Garu, you there?
Yeah, I am there. You can see me. We're not. I think we lost Lekha ma'am.
Yeah, she'll join us. I think everybody, just for a second or so, we had a technical glitch. I don't know for what reason. Anyways, no problem. So we were just talking about EAP programs, and Lekha ma'am has already told us that organizations are having these confidential services for therapists, psychologists, and even helping the people who are undergoing depression even during these challenging times. So this is really very interesting to hear that organizations are not just concerned about their productivity, but also concerned about the mental health of the employees. Maybe Jaydev Garu, you can just take us, give us some views on that.
Yeah, see, traditionally, employee assistance program, the usage of it has been pretty less. Usually, basis my interaction and experience, uh, around 5% of the workforce, they tend to use the employee assistance program. And the purpose of the employee assistance program, like Lekha ma'am has mentioned, it covers the psychological counseling, helping people cope up through the difficult times, and it also covers certain basic first level legal advice or a financial advice, so on and so forth. But ever since the COVID period started, the usage of employee assistance program has gone up significantly. And the good thing is, in many companies, the employee assistance program not only just covers the employees, but it also covers the family members. And during the last couple of months, the usage of this employee assistance program has been for a wide variety of reasons. Um, I know in some of the organizations, people wanted to have a legal view. When they heard certain discussions of layoffs and all. In some organizations, some employees reached out to the EAP, employee assistance program, for trying to understand how can they manage their finances better. In some organizations, in some cases, employees have actually reached out to the counselors, seeking their help to manage their depression and to come out of the difficult situation. In some of the cases, family members have actually reached out to these counselors, saying that, I'm going through a very difficult time with my child, who's about to write the 10th class exams, and because of the postponement of these exams, we're going through a difficult time. So people have different and unique needs, and in the last couple of months, the importance of the employee assistance program has gone up so significantly that people started using them to get the right support at the right time, so that they can actually come out of that difficult situation.
Absolutely, Jaydev Garu, as you're saying, probably before COVID, these services were not much availed by employees. But as you rightly said, during these COVID times, there is much increase of these services that employees are availing. It has actually become twice or thrice, if I may have to put it that way. Absolutely. Jaydev Garu, we are talking about various HR functions, and whenever we talk about HR procedures, the first thing that comes in our mind is talent management. And the basic principle of talent management is to retain the key talent. And even if it is a stressful scenario, I'm sure organizations are not wanting to do away with their key talent. They still want to restore their key talent in the organization because there's too much of time and money that has already been invested in them. My question to you is that what are the top 3 strategies which the corporates are implementing for training and upskilling? Because the basic thing that they have to currently understand is to upskill. To retain is one thing, but then to upskill those retained employees. So, what are the top 3 strategies that corporates are currently implementing to upskill their employees? Jaydev.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Priya. This is a very good question. Organizations, are actually trying to link the business objectives to the employees' competencies. That's a huge exercise, linking the business objectives to employees' competencies so that the desired results can be achieved. When organizations link the business objectives with employee competencies, you understand the gap between what is required to do versus what is the current skill level of the employees. And when they know this gap, that's when the entire strategies of learning and upskilling are actually formulated. Today, what organizations are telling is you have a lot of online courses, and one important strategy that the organizations are taking these days, they're telling the employees, learn at your pace and time, because you have the resources at your disposal. You're not no longer confined to a classroom based training. You can take an online training, your virtual training. You can use artificial intelligence or chatbots and various other resources that are available to test and enhance your skills. So that's a shift that the organizations are taking. They're telling that learn at your pace, and then they're also, through this linking of business objectives with the skills of the employees, they are telling very, very transparently what does the organization expect and where are you currently. Um, in one of my previous organizations, we had this strategy called skill will coachability, wherein we have actually linked the entire business objectives to the employee skills, and we've mapped in terms of for each employee where they are with respect to the current skills, and we have also told them for tomorrow skills. So since it's an IT scenario, we said our business, in our current business model, for the next 9 months we need these skills, and then we said we are getting into new technologies between 12 to the next 24 months. Then we said these are the future technologies, and then we said that this much of revenues would come from future technologies, this much revenue will come from the current technologies or legacy technologies. So then we mapped every employees, and we've had a transparent discussions with them, telling them these are the skills and technology that we expect employees to learn so that the desired business results can be achieved. And then when we link those skills to the businesses, we've identified what kind of gap is there, and every employee was assessed whether what is it that the employee is doing to upskill themselves. Resources are available, but the onus of learning still lies with the employee. And including the variable pay was also connected to the skill will coachability strategy, wherein unless and until the employee upskills, gets certified, and delivers a project, the person will not be certified of achieving certain skill. Unless and until you achieve a certain skill, you will not be able to grow further. So this is an extremely powerful strategy that the organizations have started adopting to ensure that the skills that are required for now and future are communicated, and you provide all resources to the employees so that they can understand and pick up the skills. And in this effort, gamification has a huge role to play, because organizations have found out that if you want to sustain the learning and upskilling effort, you need to make things interesting. So gamification in learning has been deployed successfully to make the overall learning effort and experience more interesting. Ma'am, would you like to add anything further on this, please?
I think Lekha ma'am is having some problem with her audio. We will just try to resolve it in a minute. Meanwhile, I'll just summarize whatever Jaydev Garu has just said. So, as of now, what we see is that organizations, in order to upskill their key talent, they are very clearly telling the employees about what is the essential skill set today and what the essential skill set they should have in future, and they are very well communicating it well in advance, and also they are giving lot of resources and giving them lot of time, as you just mentioned about learn at your own pace. Absolutely, Jaydev Garu. Thank you so much for your insights on that. As you just mentioned about gamification, we have already seen that the technology integration has happened with various other HR functions, and gamification as a tool has been very popular in specifically recruitment, and you just mentioned about learning field as well. So I just wish to understand if probably gamification has a better scope after COVID. How do you see it, Jaydev Garu?
Well,
Sorry, just a second. I think my audio is back on. Can I just respond to the previous question as well? I had certain points there, and it's a very interesting topic because we are talking of learning and development in these COVID times. And I'm sorry to the audience, something went wrong. I think power went down here and I had to re-log in. So my apologies for the same. When you're talking about skilling, and I did get a gist of what you had said, Jaydev, though I missed a lot of it, and I'm sure I would want to know more later. I do believe that technology and learning, like Jaydev had stated, is very, very much in the hands of the employee, and they have to get to upskill themselves. Things are just changing too fast, right? The other thing that's happened is that because of the transient times, people have very short bites of attention. And therefore, we are looking at learning, which comes in very small gusts, probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes, short learning exercises, which they are. I remember some time back, even Google in their transportation to the office had actually started online training. So people could actually log on to their mobiles and actually get onboarded or do a small training program while in the bus itself, right? So that's one thing. So this virtual training is coming up. It's a huge saving of time and cost because you can now get professors or people to come in and speak from anywhere in the world. So it's really economical for the company, and it's also extremely effective because today you have access to trainers and resources from anywhere. The second thing I think, and we did touch upon this a bit in the last program as well, where we said that people have to wear multiple hats, right? Like whether it is job widening or it is job enlargement or it's job enrichment, people have to be able to move from one role to the other. Jaydev last time had given a very nice example of a finance person who had to go and close a deal. So that's much the same today out here. You find that people have to be able to know about what every other function is doing. A person who's in development will still need to know what the quality is saying. They will still need to know what is the voice of the customer. They will still need, so whether it is for actual utilization or it is for actual understanding, people will need to know about other jobs, and therefore the learning will be wider. So I'm saying that you're going to have learning for breadth rather than just depth, right? So no longer are we even going to have a lot of specializations. So you are going to be having a person who is in maintenance of machines might need to know about the finance of the company, because then he'll realize, all right, what is the cost of repair versus replacement? So I will need to do my regular maintenance, So that is all part of this transparency modus. So that is the cross learning. And the third thing which I see coming up, and I see that coming up very, very fast, and I keep saying this to people, a generation below me who are seeking to get into just training as a service, organizations are going to be depending more and more on their own internal SMEs, that is their subject matter experts, to really deliver the training. While it is a known fact that all people who know do not often speak, very well, people who do may not speak as well, but it's something that is easily trainable. So therefore, I am seeing this huge shift that is going to happen where more and more internal SMEs are going to be doing the training. So we spoke of virtual training, I spoke of cross training, and I also am speaking of SMEs, internal SMEs who are going to become the trainers for tomorrow. Very little resourcing is going to be done from the outside, because you do need things which are completely customized to the organization. So that's what I wanted to add. And I hope I did not just repeat something that you had said, Jaydev. I'm sorry if I did.
No, absolutely. You covered it. Just to take a couple of points from where you left. Organizations today are following this concept of career lattice. In the yesteryears, it was a career ladder. So everything was sequential. Today, organizations are saying it's a career lattice. So in a lattice environment, you have to literally draw lines from one end to the other, and it is all across. So what organizations these days are doing is they are telling you what are all the possible opportunity and employees can get in the lattice world. That means you can go from anywhere to anywhere. And at each point, organizations are defining the kind of skills and competencies that are required, and then they are trying the learning objectives for that role. That's another thing. And like Lekha mentioned, many organizations are relying on their subject matter. In fact, in my previous organization, we started this initiative called Adjunct Faculty, which is basically pulling all the subject matter experts and training them as trainers, and the niche product training, which is not available outside, is actually being delivered through these internal trainers, which was a hugely successful model. And somebody who actually adopted that, in fact, they came back and told me that, look, we never realized that training was such a wonderful opportunity for us.
Yeah.
So, and they never realized that they could actually hone their skills and competence in training. So, sometimes, organizations do create these opportunities in the lattice world, and these kind of, initiatives like Adjunct Faculty, or wherein you train the people internally, subject matter experts, go a long way in upskilling the employees. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to add to what you just said again, because it's so interesting, I hope we don't spend all our time on this, but just one more point. You spoke of career lattices. And I think that's something, again, which has a lot of relevance for even institutes, like even Dhruva, for instance. It is my earnest belief that the specializations are not going to be relevant tomorrow. I think a general MBA is going to be something which is going to be much more valued. I think you were in Genpact as well in one of your earlier assignments, right? And you would have seen out there that our Bankam or Genpact. And I had seen that one of the things there was that very young people are being taken, not only for the BPO segment, but also for the services segment. And I found that the organizations were actually tying up with universities to then have them do their graduate programs internally. And the MBAs that they then did, the management programs that they then did, were actually geared completely with the psychology, the culture, and the values of that particular organization. So I'm seeing a lot of that inbreeding that is happening also, and so in my opinion, that's a huge change, and it will augur very differently for institutes of repute as
well. Right, ma'am. A very good suggestion, not just for educational institutions, but otherwise even students who are attending, they should understand that the focus from specialization is now moving to generalization. Generalist profiles are going to be quite popular in times to come. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, we just started off that question and then we lost you in between because of some technical glitch. So I'll just repeat that question. We were just talking about integration of technology and various other HR functions. And we just made a mention, even Jaydev Garu made a mention about gamification. So gamification as a tool, we know that it is quite popular in foreign nations and even in India, but it is only used in recruitment as of now, not much into various other HR functions. Maybe I have a limited knowledge. Maybe you can just help me understand further on that. So that's my question to you. What is the basic scope of gamification?
So, let's not look at gamification only from the point of view of technology. Okay, gamification is using the principles of a game to be able to further learning. Okay, a learning objective. Now, that is not necessarily only virtual reality or augmented reality or artificial intelligence. That's one part of it, right? But we also have a lot of exercises which are done, and you're right, a lot of it is being used in recruiting. We recently had, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was LinkedIn, that had an internal game of teams. And they were given just 1.5 hours as a team to be able to go ahead and recruit for very hard to fill positions, right? And it was amazing. I think in 1.5 hours, the team actually came up with 265 positions closed in 1.5 hours. I mean, just imagine, how long it usually takes, right? So the thrill of competing, the thrill of being innovative, the thrill of putting your synergies together, of being symbiotic on one another, being dependent, is what we're talking about gamification. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was this hospital. I think it was in Belgium, if I'm not mistaken. But what they did was, when they were looking at people who needed to come and maintain rooms, hospital rooms, they gave a picture of a room and they had to select, or they had to come down to the 25 things that were wrong in the room and what needed to be done, with it. So that is a game. And in teams, they then had to put that question: is it something that is only specific here? Is it something that is worth correcting now? What is going to be the cost of it, and so on, as a team? And therefore, that again brought in, or it made that embedded into them about what needs to be done to make sure that customers are going to be satisfied. There was another similar thing that happened in a hotel, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Marriott Hotels, and very much in India also they had done during the onboarding process and even during the recruiting process as part of the selection. They asked people to go into a situation and as a team, and their entire idea in that 1 hour was to see how many of them are going to get customer accolades, right? So every time you get a customer praise, you get a point. Every time you get a customer complaint, you get a -1. And that actually allowed them to get into that customer focus, right? We have Deloitte, for instance, which uses gamification in a big way. I have used it myself in a number of companies where we've done the entire onboarding process even before the people joined. A lot of it which is not privy, not something which is sacred to the organization, but which can be in the open domain. A lot of that training, or the alert, the awareness of the organizational principles, policies, values, mission, who's who in the organization, that was all fed to them even before they came in. That helped us to be able to save time during the onboarding, of course, and also helped, the fact that when people know more about what the company is doing and who's in the company, etc., it helps the bonding to be more. So we had less number of people who dropped out at the final stages. We had Cisco, which does this all the time. Every time there is a new learning, a new skill, or a new shift in projects, they continuously do gamification of what is, what can be, what should be, what was, and therefore what will not work. So they have this training again, which is again in a game model. So it's there throughout, right? I mean, you can have samurais who are fighting, with a sword. That is a particular product development tool to be able to say how they're going to satisfy the customer. It can be a car race for a company that was, in fact, in the car motor industry, and was a client of my IT company, one of the IT companies that I was. We did a gamification of onboarding using a car race, because they were into car manufacturing. So this is something which is a very qualitative kind of a tool. So let's not look at it only as quantitative. It's something which increases the energy, increases the motivation, puts the thrill of learning back into the employee. It's a huge engagement exercise, and it encourages teaming and collaboration, which is one of the things that we really look for in organizations today. So it's really something about making sure that the organization knows and understands right from the outset what are the competencies that matter, which are the ones that are going to be making that person successful or a failure. How do we measure it? And also, what do we do to be able to be compliant? So if you know about this, you can make a game to be able to use that in any layer of HR, whether in engagement or training and development, or lateral movements you have, or even in layoffs, for instance, even looking at a separation as a very encouraging game to say what could be the possible opportunities for a person outside, and how the rest of the organization helps that person to be able to reboot outside, is again something where gamification is in use. There's a very nice article which was there in, I think it was in HR Acuity, if I'm not mistaken. And the article was on reimagining, and it was by somebody called Deb Muller, I think. Very nice article on how gamification can work in HR. Yes. Jaidev, would you like to add anything?
Apart from what you've said, the only other interesting area that gamification is used is in for BCP and DRP, for business contingency plans and disaster recovery plans. Gamification is used apart from hiring, training, and all, because organizations are putting the young managers and workforce how to manage situations in uncertain times. So for all the BCP and DRPs also, gamification is being used. Right. Thank you.
Right, ma'am. So Just to tell all the parents who are there attending our webinar, so gamification till now, whenever we see our millennial children sticking onto the Xbox and their gaming pods, so we keep on scolding them. So probably now we are using gamification professionally, so maybe they can use their gaming skills in future, and that is actually going to help them. So thumbs up for that. Another question, Jaydev Garu. Last 2-3 decades, organizations have always been focusing on the culture of the organization, bringing in the right mix of people, bringing in people of a varied experience, geographical location, etc. So my question is, after COVID, can we expect any changes in the diversity front? And how can HR make best use of this particular scenario?
Oh yeah, actually, COVID has actually brought in new opportunities as far as diversity is concerned. So let me flip the coin. The biggest challenge that the HR team faces as far as diversity, whether it's gender diversity, whether other forms of diversity in terms of hiring people from different geographies or hiring people with different skills or limited physical abilities, there are some challenges. Some are infrastructural related challenges, some are relocation challenges, some are skill availability challenges. Now what COVID and the work from home has done is, and now that organizations understand that this is going to be a new reality and organizations are prepared to have this work from home for a fairly longer period of time, this gives the HR community lots of opportunities to enhance their diversity. You can hire people from different locations and they can still work from home. You can hire a lot of women who would typically have some relocation challenges. With this work from home, you can actually hire a lot more women who can actually work from their own home locations. There are also challenges with respect to some of the physically challenged people, wherein the organizations are not geared to have the right kind of infrastructure set up in the organization, though they might wish to. In this COVID and work from home setup, organizations can actually help the physically challenged person to set up the home office and have the employee work from home. So therefore, there's a huge opportunity to enhance your diversity talent in terms of geographical location, in terms of gender diversity, and also in terms of people with physical challenges. There's a huge opportunity to enhance your diversity quotient because the work from home now enables this.
True, Jaydev. Very true. I think, yes, while we definitely recognize the fact that physically challenged, especially, people who are handicapped would be able to have a safer environment at home and they can still contribute very well to organizations. That's one area. The second one is women, and not only because they find it difficult to relocate, but also because of flexi time. They'd be able to do it at their own pace. Even while women, men who have, let's say, they're carers of older people, their parents or their grandparents, etc. at home, will also be able to now obviously be able to come back to the workforce. Earlier, they used to take a sabbatical because, somebody was ill or needed care, etc. Now they can actually log in even from hospitals. Yesterday, I had somebody on a webinar of mine who was logging in from the hospital basement because they wanted to be in, and her father was admitted in the hospital. So it really depends on how are you looking at diversity. So whether it is gender, it is generation, it is handicap, whatever it is, ethnicity, different backgrounds from rural areas, etc. And today, with the kind of translators that you have also online, it makes it very easy for people to talk even in a different language and still get understood. So I think diversity is definitely going to be increasing in organizations and helping to get a more competent workforce into the company.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and Jaydev Garu, on your insights on cultural diversity and the opportunities that we see during these challenging times. Lekha ma'am, as an intellectual nation and as India has always been proud of its education system, but we always had this tremendous concern about a phenomena called brain drain. And we have always been worried about our intellectual people leaving the nation and working for some other foreign nation. I'm thinking in a very optimistic way. Probably after COVID, can we see any possibility of reverse brain drain to happen?
Absolutely. I think it's already happening, and it's not something which is optimistic. It is a reality. We are finding people coming back to India. We are a resilient economy. You are going to find a lot more opportunities here. Plus, people are longing to get back to their home country. You are finding that happening. The only thing that I would like to caution people who are worried about it being a competition, it's not a competition at all. It's really a complementary resource that we can get in. And I think the government will need to do something to make sure that this reverse brain drain stays, that they are retained. So they will need to do things like making it easier for them to do business, making it easier for them to pay their taxes, just generally making the environment very supportive of people who are returning back to the country, getting their properties back, their monies back, etc. Another thing that you will see happening now is the pause that there is in college admissions, because people have already registered for colleges overseas, and you are going to be finding that they're now worried. Do I go and, do I take it on? Do I withdraw it? Do I shift to an Indian college? What am I going to do right now? So I believe that that is something which is again going to cause people to think, um, stay back, maybe do it online. Maybe we may have a lot more US colleges actually opening up in India, opening up admissions directly from India and delivering courses online. And it could be vice versa. A lot of students from overseas who used to take the trouble of coming and staying here and going to courses out here will probably find it as easy to do it there as well. I'm also thinking that, one is reverse brain drain. The other one is this thing about students. And I think the third thing is, I think you'll actually have a brain gain. So you'll also have people from other countries who would like to come and make India their, uh, their residence, because of the opportunities that I am pretty sure are going to open up in India. I think we are going to be one of the new leaders, new leading economies worldwide, not only because of the way in which we've done COVID, and I hope we haven't been too premature in speaking about it, but I think the way in which we as a country, as a culture, we are extremely resilient. And I think we will come back and come back with force. We are going to take our country forward, and a lot of countries across the world will find that this is a very appealing place to therefore come and make home. So we are also going to have, I think, a brain gain, not only a reverse brain drain. Jaydev?
No, well summarized, ma'am. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Right, ma'am. So the nation has to be prepared to handle so many brainy peoples back in India. So I feel it is to be like that. Okay, ma'am. Thank you for the insight on the reverse brain drain concept. And now I have a question to Jaydev Garu. 2008, 2009 recession, if I remember it right, those were the years when we saw a huge surge in the part-time job, especially the outsourcing as a concept actually came into work during that time. So optimistically thinking, can we expect any specific best practice that we are currently using or is gaining popularity during the lockdown and is definitely sure to be in the times to come? Do you think of any best practice that we are currently using?
RPO as a model will certainly gain more prominence because of the flexibility it offers, and especially during uncertain times. That's actually RPO's one best practice, which will gain a lot of momentum and acceptance as well. Automation. A lot of organizations have now started automation, especially when they realize a lot of their transactional work or non-value added work has to be eliminated. Many organizations in India, unfortunately, they still have a lot of transactional work, and there is a huge opportunity to automate that. So automation, virtual reality, virtual onboarding, those are the best practices that will continue for a very long time. And apart from that, usage of collaboration tools, like the one that we are using now, and many collaboration tools which were used during the lockdown period, to share their views, ideas, whether it could be the Zooms of the world or various other things, whether there could be chatter groups or the Microsoft tools, which they use extensively for collaborating and running the business. These are a lot of collaboration tools will now come into the forefront, and they will be the new normal to drive the business in the future. Yeah. And ma'am, anything from your side?
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit because again, this is something that I've been thinking about. I believe that there are going to be lots of challenges that are coming up ahead, but there's been a lot of recognition of those challenges during these COVID times. I think HR, for instance, has got to recognize the fact about daycare challenges, about staffing challenges, about school closures. Like now, offices have opened. You don't have help at home. A lot of women and even men are finding it difficult to be able to go to work. But because the children are at home, schools aren't open, there is no daycare service, there are no maids or staff, domestic staff which are coming. How do they manage to work? And I think HR is beginning to recognize this. Education from home is another thing. And I think I spoke about this at the last time as well, that organizations are beginning to find ways to be able to supplement the courseware through giving them access. We've also looked at Zoom, for instance, or other conferencing tools. Like Jaydev had spoken about recruitment, for instance, video conferencing interviews is something which is definitely going to gain more credence. People are going to find it so much easier to get people online and see them and talk to them face to rather than getting them, into the organization and, flying in from, let's say, Delhi to Hyderabad for an interview. It's going to be that much easier. I also believe, of course, EAP is here to stay. So there are lots of things, and gig workers. I think you are going to find a lot of gig workers, a lot of contractual workers who are going to be here to stay. The rules of the game will therefore change. It's not going to be retention alone. What's going to happen is, how do I create that emotional bond with people who are here only for a contract or only for a particular delivery? And it's fine, a project delivery. Even after they leave, will they continue to be an ambassador of my company? So the alumni networking of organizations will have to also be strengthened, just like the way in which we do it for institutes. So I believe things are up for a huge change. And like I said, it's very exciting times. I mean, I'd love to be able to keep thinking about things that, that can be done. HR is completely now in the driver's seat, in my opinion. It's fabulous. And I just remembered the name of that article, by the way. It's called Resilience, Recovery and Reimagining by Deb Muller. And it's in an issue of HR Acuity. It's online. Fabulous article. It speaks about what's going to happen post-COVID and the kind of imagination that needs to be done by HR to be able to make sure that they are innovative. And Jugaad, as it is, India is known for its Jugaad, and I feel Indian HR is definitely going to be able to empathize better. Culturally, we are a very people-conscious country itself. I believe that there are great times ahead. So a lot of things which are going to be here to stay, and a lot more chance for innovation is up.
Lovely, ma'am, lovely. So concepts of total rewards, gig workers, EAP, and more and more dependence on technology is definitely going to happen in times to come. So if I'm putting it right, based on both of your insights that you have shared. Ma'am, since the discussion is becoming really interesting and we are not able to keep a track of the time, so I would just draw your attention to one of the questions that I've received from the participant, and the attendee is a student, I suppose, and she is asking that what are the possible job avenues that are likely to be crowd pullers, because we see a lot of changes happening, the demand is changing. So her question is, what are the possible job avenues that are likely to be major crowd pullers in times to come?
I think one of the areas is definitely going to be the industry of healthcare. That is obviously going to be one where people are going to be required not only to manage other people, but to manage systems. So, and finance. So I think that's something which is a huge tomorrow for India. I also believe things like relationship building online, for instance, services online. My banker just called me up this morning and said, ma'am, I can imagine that you must be having an issue with cash. So can I send you some cash at home? And I thought that was such a nice thing, because I was actually not stepping out of house, and I was thinking about how to go to the ATM, and I was a little reluctant to touch the ATM also. But he says that he's going to send me the cash at home. All I needed to do was to be able to send him a picture of the check that I would give his person. Video calling centers, and so just call centers. I think to create the relationship with distributors, more and more places are going to be located in villages, in rural areas, in small towns than big places. So people need to be, they need to find it easy to relocate and probably have a holiday away, when they are at work, because they're going to be beautiful places. I have somebody who is looking to start a video call center in a place in Panchgani, for instance, and one very interesting assistance that was coming from him to these small town women who would be part of that call center is that he was giving them 500 rupees to go and have a makeover at a nearby beauty parlor, in order to be part of that video call center, and the women were very excited about it. So I think things like that, very exciting areas. Tourism is going to be more online. I doubt if I was a person who was completely into cruises, okay? I mean, those of you who've been part of my network earlier would realize that I used to do a cruise a year with my mother, and we used to have fabulous times, including going to see the Northern Lights and stuff. And I fear that that's going to be a thing of the past. People are going to be very worried about that. So I think it's going to be more green economy, inland tourism, restauranting, which is going to be more contactless eating out. You're going to find things like greenhousing, which is going to come up, vertical farming, which is going to come up. So new industries, and therefore our people, our students will need to be ready to cope with any of these challenges, and will need to learn and know more about these kind of industries which haven't even come. Biotechnology, for instance, is again going to be something which is, biomanufacturing is going to be something which is going to come up again. So, network, the dependence that we've had on telecom is just pointing us to the fact that that's obviously going to be a place that is going to call for more management people. So a lot of stuff which is going to happen. I don't know how many of you have gone to Safari Online every evening. There is a Safari Online which at 7:30 in the evening, at 9 o'clock in the morning, that you can go and see the safaris in Kruger in South Africa. And I think managing those kind of resources is again going to be something that people in finance, in HR, etc. would love to go and work in a place like that. So the field is open. Lot of new avenues are going to come. I believe that places, organizations which have been there, are there today, will need to survive with newer systems and procedures, but newer opportunities and newer industries are definitely going to make their way. Jaideep?
Yeah, ma'am. Apart from the traditional sources for employment like pharmaceutical and manufacturing, e-commerce will actually take the next step ahead because we've been hearing a lot of statements saying that from various political circles and learned people in the healthcare sciences stream, that we will have to learn to live with this virus for some more time till the vaccine comes. So in future, e-commerce will be a big thing because it's going to provide a lot of alternate solutions when compared with the traditional business models. So then artificial intelligence, jobs in artificial intelligence will go up a lot. E-commerce, artificial intelligence, agro-processing is going to be one huge area because the government is giving a lot of stimulus and support for agriculture and its related businesses. So at least I see pharmaceuticals, e-commerce, agro-processing, and even OTT. That's going to be another space wherein there's going to be a lot more jobs that is coming up with the success of Amazon and Netflix. OTT will be another platform wherein the business will grow, so will the employment opportunities will grow. So these are the areas that I can see. And another thing is that as the reforms continue, we can actually see a lot of private players coming in the field of railways, and not the related support structure for the railway industry, as well as for the defense industries also. Those could be another opportunities for jobs there. Right. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much, Jaidev Garu and Lekha ma'am, for some amazing inputs that are helpful for not only professionals, for students as well. I'm sure we have had a extremely enriching session, and I'm very hopeful. Whenever I listen to both of you, I feel really optimistic, and I'm very hopeful that we are going to win over this battle very beautifully. So thank you so much for this contagious positive energy that you always pass on to me. Thank you so much, ma'am and Jaidev Garu. And I also wish to say that we would be looking for more such opportunities to hear from both of you. So we'll keep bothering you whenever it is possible. So, ma'am, Jaidev Garu, I also request some just 2 minutes time for from the attendees because I have an important announcement to make.
Thank you so much, Professor Priya. I wanted to say that, like I said before, this is interesting. The time is fabulous. I love talking at Dhruva any time at all, and it's always exciting. I believe that the future is rich for our students. I believe that they just need to be able to embrace a very strong growth mindset, to be able to continuously learn, keep their minds open, and I believe that they must challenge the status quo as it is today. I think that's very important. Don't just take things the way they are. Keep challenging, keep rising above, keep being innovative, be creative, and continuously grow. That's important. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Professor Priya. It's really wonderful. And Jaidev, as usual, it is wonderful being a co-panelist with you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you, Professor Priya, for the opportunity. Anything for the Dhruva family, please, I'm just a phone call away. Thank you once again.
So much. That's so sweet of both of you. Lekha ma'am, we have a request from one of our attendees, Professor Ullas. He wants you to, if you can repeat the name of the article which you just mentioned. Lekha ma'am?
Sorry. Yeah. So, should I write it on this and send it to you and you can give it to him? Or I have Professor Ullas's
I'll do that. I'll do that, ma'am. I'll share it with the rest of the attendees as well. It will be helpful for them. Yes. You can just share it with me. I'll share it with the attendees. Yeah.
I'll do
so, yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. In just 15, it's about 4:30 right now. Yeah. In a couple of minutes, as in 30 minutes from now, we have a wonderful opportunity to hear the founder chairman of Dhruva address on glitches in education sector during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this will be a very interesting session for the students, academician, and even for the panel, for the parents. And you can see the link, and the way you can log on to the link is given below. Also, I request all the attendees who have spared time to listen to our wonderful session. I request you all, if you're interested in finance and if you are quite interested in investing in share markets. So we have Professor Gokul Krishnan, who would be helping you out understand the basic rules of investing in share market. So we would love to have you on 21st of May between 2:30 to 3:30. So with this, we come to an end to this webinar session. All attendees, I'm sure you have sent in your email IDs. We would share a synopsis of our discussion shortly. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.